Hi guys, this is Ms. Schuler. So what I'm going to do today is go over the rest of the long division practice worksheet that Ms. Fry went over in the other video. If you have not already done so, please make sure that you try these problems on your own first before you watch this video. The purpose of this video is to check your answers. You should have gotten enough information from the previous video and notes to be able to understand long division. So really we're just checking our answers here, or if you got stuck on something. All right, so we're going to actually start with number 7, which is what Ms. Fry finished with, but we're going to start with it just so we can get the full answer here. Okay, so this is the setup. And then we think about how many times does 6 go into 8 without going over, and that's just one time. 6 times 1 is 6. We subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. And then we need to bring down the 7. And we think about how many times 6 goes into 27 without going over. And we can think about this. 6 times 4 is 24, but 6 times 5 is 30. So 6 times 4 is what we want. It's not too big, so we'll put 4 here. 6 times 4 is 24. We subtract. 27 minus 24, and we get 3. Then we will bring down the 0. And then again, we think about, okay, 6 times what gives us 30? Well, in this example right here to the side, we saw that 6 times 5 is 30. So the answer here is 5. 6 times 5 is 30. We subtract. And we have no remainder here. So our quotient, our answer to this division problem is 145. So 870 divided by 6 is 145. Next, we'll go over numbers 5 and 6. So for 5, we have 5490 divided by 18. So we start by thinking about, okay, how many times does 18 go into 5 without going over? Well, it doesn't. 5 is too small. So then we think about, okay, how many times does 18 go into 54 without going over? And this will work. So we need to go ahead and check some of our multiples of 18. So let's try maybe 18 times 3 to start. And you can put this into your calculator. And 18 times 3 is exactly 54. So perfect. So I'm going to put 3 here. 18 times 3 is 54. We subtract. 54 minus 54 is 0. Then we are going to bring down the 9. And we think about, okay, how many times does 18 go into 9 without going over? And again, like 5, 9 is too small. So we're going to put 0 here as a placeholder and then bring down the 0 here. Then we think about, all right, how many times does 18 go into 90 without going over? Well, we know 54 is too small. What about 18 times 4? That's 72. Still maybe too small. What about 18 times 5? Well, when we put that in, we get 90, so that's perfect. So that's what we want. So we want a 5 here. 18 times 5 is 90. 90 minus 90 is 0. So our quotient here, our answer to our division problem is 305. So 5490 divided by 18 equals 305. Now for number 6, we've got 516 divided by 3. So we think about how many times does 3 go into 516? It goes in once without going over. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 minus 3 is 2, and then we can bring down the 1. And we think about how many times does 3 go into 21 without going over? Well, 3 times 7 is exactly 21. So 7. 3 times 7 is 21. We subtract. 21 minus 21 is 0. And then we bring down the 6. And we think about 3 times what gives me 6? Well, that's 2. 3 times 2 is 6. We subtract. 6 minus 6 is 0. So our quotient here is 172. So 516 divided by 3 is 172. All right, last couple problems here. We've got 1339 divided by 13. So we start by thinking about 13 multiplied by what gives us 1, or what's the biggest number that we could multiply by 13 to give us 1. 1 is too small. So we move on to the next digit. 13, what's the biggest number we can multiply by 13 to get us 13? Well, that's 1. 13 times 1 is 13. 13 minus 13 is 0. We bring down the 3. And we think about 13 times what would give us 3. Well, that's too small. So we'll also we'll put 0 in as a placeholder, and then we'll bring down the 9. And so we have to think about 13 times what gives us 39. Well, 13 times 3 gives us 39. So we put a 3 here. 13 times 3 is 39. 39 minus 39 is 0. So our quotient here is 103. 1339 divided by 13 is 103. And final problem here, 1720 divided by 20. We think about, okay, what can we multiply 20 by to give us 1? Well, that's too small. We move on to the next digit. What can we multiply by 20 by to get us 17 without going over? Again, still too small, so we actually go to 172. And so we need to think about, okay, what's the biggest thing that we can multiply 20 by without going over that's the closest to 172? Well, let's try 20 times 8. Well, if I do this, 20 times 8, I get 160. Might be close. Let's see. What about 20 times 9? Well, 20 times 9 is 180. That's too big. So I'm going to use 8 here. So I'm going to put 8. 20 times 8 is 160. So we subtract 172 minus 160, and we get 12. And then we can bring down the 0. And so we think about, okay, what do we multiply 20 by to get 120 without going over? And actually it works out here that 20 times 6 is exactly 120. So this is 6. 20 times 6 is 120. 120 minus 120 is 0. So this right here is our quotient. And we get 1720 divided by 20 equals 86. So again, hopefully you use this to check your answers to the long division problems. We will very soon be talking about polynomial long division. So all that we did with the numerical long division is just getting you to recall how to do the process of long division, but it is an elementary school skill. But now we're going to move on to the actual Algebra 2 skill in our next video, which will be about polynomial long division. Have a good day, guys.